Good morning, Magic Players and card collectors of all kinds. That was very cute, Kaiba. Welcome back to the channel. My dad has just stepped out. I have no idea for how long. But it is Sunday, and I figure since he's gone, and this deck is not an overly complicated one, we might as well give a shot to filming the classic Super Deck Sunday. Yes, baby, you have a few treats left over from your park walk. Yes, I put them on the floor because I had folded up the bed so I could do the sewing, which I've now suspended because I'm going to do this filming. And he's going to the bathroom to lay down on the cold floor. Alright, so I wanted to try and do this deck as quickly as possible, just so I can get the episode out for you guys on time. In case you missed my post, I will not be putting out a park trip video today. I am trying to get out a video either this evening or at the absolute latest tomorrow before I have to take Kaiba to the VET for his annual checkup. But if all goes well, you'll see that video in plenty of time, and I'll be able to actually film some stuff at the doctor's office as well. He's just going for his annual and for his shots and for getting weighed up, all that good stuff. But yeah, so I'm going to be talking about that later though, because I have a pretty big video that I want to talk about, like a big topic video, there we go, that I want to discuss. So, and that's not what this is for. This is for our card games. So today I mentioned last week that I had finished this deck and I wanted to present it to you guys. I just didn't have the time to sort it out. So today I have it sorted out. And we are going to discuss my almost all allies deck. That is what I'm going to call it for now until I come up with a better name. I might call it Four Nations as One or something like that. I haven't decided for sure exactly what I'm calling it just yet. But I did already express that there was I'm going to put those two cards there as a separate thing. I did already explain who my commander was, so I'm not even going to bother hiding it and try and do the commander guess a game. I wanted to build a 5-color allies deck, and the best commander for that is definitely Avatar Aang. So for one of red, green, white, and blue, you get a 4/4 with flying and firebending 2. So firebending is whenever you attack with Aang, you will get 2 red mana added to your mana pool, and you don't lose that mana during the combat step or the rest of your phases until the end of the turn. So essentially you get a bonus 2 red mana for attacking with Aang. And then whenever you waterbend, earthbend, firebend, or airbend, you get to draw a card. And if you've done all 4 this turn, you get to transform Aang. So then Aang transforms into the Aang, Master of Elements, who is a 6/6 with flying. All your spells cost Wooburg less to cast, so essentially 1 of each mana less, which is kind of nice. That doesn't apply to colorless mana, I don't believe. Does it say it does? Oh, it can reduce generic costs too, which is kind of cool. Awesome. And then at the beginning of each upkeep, you can transform Aang back into the original form if you want. If you do, you get to gain 4 life, draw 4 cards, put 4 +1/+1 counters on Aang, and deal 4 damage to each opponent. So that is an insane amount of abilities that come off when you transform him back. It is kind of challenging to transform him in a turn, though, because you have to do all 4 bending in one turn. So this deck does have a decent amount of airbending, earthbending, firebending, and waterbending in it. Not as much as it could. There's definitely more benders and bendable cards that I could have added. But there's a specific reason why I didn't add those cards, and you're going to see that later on. First though, let's go through the lands. There's nothing crazy going on. I did want to try and pick all the the Avatar set lands. So we've got all the basics from the set. I believe there's 5 of each except for the forest. The forest, I believe there's only 4 basics, and there's a specific reason for that, which you'll see at the end of this pile, of course. We've got 2 full art plains, 2 full art islands, 2 full art swamps. I've got 1 of each of the kinds, which is kind of cool. I've got 2 full art mountains, and I've got 2 full art forests. And then we've got, I wanted to include, again, because it's an Avatar-based deck, I wanted to include as many of the settings as possible from the Avatar, so I've got Omashu City, Misty Plains Oasis, Serpent's Pass, North Pole Gates, Meditation Pools, Kyoshi Village, Foggy Bottom Swamp, Boiling Rock Prison, and Sunblessed Peak. The only one I didn't include was the Is It land, because I just did not like the airship engineering room or whatever it was called. I just didn't like the look of it, and I felt it wasn't quite what I was going for in this deck, so I didn't want to include that one. Instead, though, I have Rumble Arena and Jasmine T Dragon Shop. So this one's nice because if I Earthbend this one, it will be able to be a vigilant attacker. What's nice about this one is if I have the mana available to pay 5, I can tap this and create an ally creature token. Or if, for example, Aang is out and he's transformed, then I can tap this for free. Which is kind of cool. No, it's only cost of spells, isn't it? I don't think it's abilities. Let me double check that before I make a claim that isn't true. Pretty sure it's only the cost. Yeah, it's the cost of a spell. So no, it won't reduce the T ability. But I mean, if I'm not paying for other things, then that's not that big a deal. Next up, we have Path of Ancestry. As I say, this is an almost entirely all allies deck. I think there might be 5 or 6 creatures that are not allies. Maximum of 10. And everything else has the ally archetype. So since Aang has the ally archetype, I will be scrying constantly whenever I play creatures, which is cool. And then finally, of course, I included Ba Sing Se because I needed the earthbending. So there's an extra card that will let me earthbend in the deck. It does still count as green mana. It just does not count as a forest. So I can't search for it specifically, but yeah. Otherwise, I believe, like I say, I have 3 of each color, with the exception of swamps. If I remember correctly, I reduced the swamps to like 3 copies only, or maybe 4 max, because I just did not need a lot of swamps in this deck. There's not a lot of black cards in this deck, to be perfectly honest. Cards that use black mana. I want to make that specific. I don't want to be rude. Not that I meant it that way, but I just always worry that people will take things out of context the wrong way. Next up, do I want to do this pile next? Yes, I want to do this pile next. So this pile here is everything that is not a creature in this deck, or not a land, which is pretty insane. There is not a lot of cards in this pile. I think there's less than 20, if I remember correctly. Might be only 15, even. So a lot of these are lessons, because there's a few creatures in this deck that definitely like lessons, but I mean, for the most part, I just try to include as many Avatar cards again as possible into this. So I like this version of Dramatic Reversal. I've got the Airbending lesson. I believe I have Waterbending and Earthbending as well, but I did not include the Firebending lesson because I did not like what that one did. Origin of Metalbending is pretty solid. I particularly like the indestructible part. Yip Yip. I went back and forth about including this one, and ultimately I decided I had to simply because of the flavor, more so than anything else. But it does work with my ally-based deck, so I mean, there is that. Octopus Form, pretty solid. Enter the Avatar State is an insanely good card. I really like this one a lot, and if I have the ability to replay it a couple times, that would be cool. Eloquentia is, I think, one of the only counter spells in this deck besides the Octopus Form and the Origin of Metalbending. which the other two are not technically counter spells, they just help protect the creature, per se. Draw 3 cards and discard unless you waterbend 2, so again, just more, that's the waterbending lesson. Here's the earthbending lesson. So we're just trying to get the bending going in this deck as much as possible. The one type of bending that I do not focus heavily on in this deck happens to be firebending, and that's mainly because if I'm trying to do all 4 at the same time, it's specifically because my commander's already out, so it's kind of silly not to at that point. This one's pretty decent. I really like the, actually the next 2 cards are both pretty decent. So you may waterbend 6, draw 2 cards, and then if you paid this spell additional cost, instead you shuffle your graveyard into your library, draw 7 cards, and you have no maximum hand size for this game. So this is just a fun way to get all my allies back, and that's the main reason why it's in here. Whereas this one is just insanely fun because it wipes the entire board and puts everything into exile. I think that's pretty awesome. Plus, airbending is, again, something key to this deck, so I put the waterbender, or the bender's water skin in here. It is the only artifact in the entire deck, and it's mainly in here because it untaps during everybody's untap steps, so I have an extra mana available all the time. Descendant's Path, again, since almost everything in here is either human or ally, this is going to pop off pretty much every turn, unless it happens to be one of this small pile or a land that's on top. And finally, The Legend of Yang Shen. To be perfectly honest, I don't care as much about the actual enchantment saga of this. Like, I wasn't really looking at what the first or second part does even when I bought this card the other day, or traded for this card the other day, I mean, sorry. But this is just insanely good. Whenever you cast your second spell each turn, you get to airbend up to one other target non-land permanent. So that's going to help trigger Aang sufficiently. And that's the main reason why I bought, or again, didn't buy. Why do I keep saying buy? I think I want to say the word got, but I keep saying bought. I got this card the other day in a trade. I mentioned to you guys the other day that I got a few cards in a trade for the rooms deck that we're building. And so that was the Avatar card that I got in the trade. I did do one other trade the other day as well for another Avatar card, which you're going to see shortly. But it was a separate trade, and it was just something that they wanted for my Avatar collection. I got like 4 Combustion Man in my box. And I really don't think I'm going to ever use all 4 copies. So I traded one of the copies of Combustion Man for the other card that I got. Plus, I threw in like a couple other random things for the value to be balanced out. Alright, those 2 are saving till the end. Is this pile the next pile? I wanted to split these ones up and I forgot to do that. Because I was going to put, nope, you know what? We're going to do it that way. Screw it. Alright, this pile here is all allies that are not Avatar cards. So I wanted to do this. I was saying before that I didn't want to include all the bending as possible because I wanted to include old school cards into this deck. Because I think that they have a really neat value in this deck that nobody's probably looking at. And so that's why this is going to be really fun, I think, for me. So most of these cards have an ability where whenever the card itself or another card that is called an ally enters the battlefield under your control, you get an ability. This one gets +1/+1 counters, and it's really cheap to get into play, so that's the main reason it's in the deck. This one lets me tap to draw a card for all the allies I control, so that's just an insanely good way to get things out of my deck, especially after I do that one card for the Waterbending 6. The Archer here is going to be a really helpful card in the deck because there's not a lot of things with reach or flying in the deck specifically, so this is just going to help me get rid of creatures with flying that my opponents control. This guy, his power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures I control, so that's pretty insane. And then I can tap any other ally I control, and he gets First Strike, Vigilance, or Trample. So if I have 3 available allies, I can give them all 3 abilities. This is probably one of my favorite old school allies. He is one that I actually had in my original green and red ally deck. He was like the head of the deck, essentially. So whenever he or another ally enters the battlefield under my control, I get to put a 2/2 wolf creature token onto the battlefield if I want to. And if I do, I put a +1/+1 counter on him. So he gets really beefy first off, and he gets to make me a whole army of wolves, which is really nice. I forgot to get a wolf token to add to this deck. Have to do that later. This guy gives all my allied creatures menace until end of turn whenever he or another ally enters. This one, all my allies get vigilance. This one, all my allies gain trample. This one, whenever an ally enters, I get to tap a creature that an opponent controls. This one, whenever he or another ally enters, I can have him deal damage to target creature equal to the number of allies it controls. So he's basically just the same thing as the archer, except he can hit anything, whereas the archer hits specifically creatures with flying. Lantern Scout is another one that gives... Nope, this one gives all my creatures lifelink, pardon me. This one, whenever an ally enters, everybody loses a life and I gain a life. This one gives all my ally creatures first strike. This one gives all my allies a vigilance, so there's 2 in here that gives a vigilance thing just in case. And this was my other favorite for my old school deck. So my old school deck had 2 really key cards in it. It was this one, and it was this one. And they were both insanely good if you could get them on the field together. So this one, like I say, gives me wolves and beefs himself up. This one, whenever he or another ally enters the battlefield under my control, I get to put +1/+1 counter on each ally I control. So he's going to buff up my entire field for me. And this one just gives me a whole bunch of extra blockers. Insanely good old school cards that just are completely being ignored as far as I can tell in this set because everybody's so focused on using just the stuff from the Avatar set. So I'm really excited to include those in my commander deck. But now let's get into the Avatar cards themselves. So we've got the Badger Mole because it has to be included in here for sure. It earthbends 2 when it enters, but the main thing is that all my creatures with +1/+1 counters on them are going to have trample. So if that one ally happens to pop off once and give everything on my board trample, that is insanely good. Sun Warriors, Firebending X, where X is the number of creatures you control. Pay 5, you can make an ally. So this one's just a really good one to put in extra allies and trigger a bunch of abilities. Flying, Waterbending 4, draw a card, discard a card. Pretty decent overall. This guy gets +1/+0 for all the ally colors among allies, so he can basically become a 5/2. And then you can pay Wooburg +2 to Earthbend 5. North Pole Patrol, untap target permanent you control, except for this one. And Waterbend 3, tap target creature and opponent controls. Decent all around, I think. Compassionate Healer, whenever this creature becomes tapped, you gain a life with Scry 1. When this creature enters, put a +1/+1 counter on each other ally you control, and then whenever another ally enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on this guy. So he does essentially what the red creature I showed you earlier does, but only one time. He does have trample, though, automatically built in, which is pretty good. Whenever this or another ally enters, you gain 1 life. If it's the second time it happened this turn, you still get to draw a card. Pretty decent. This guy lets all my lands and all my allies tap for adding 1 mana of any color. Yue the Moon Spirit, I love her. Flying Vigilance, 3/3 with Waterbend 5, tap, you may cast a non-creature spell from your hand without paying its mana cost. There are not a lot of non-creature spells in this deck, but essentially the Waterbending 5 is the main reason she's on here. Prowess, and whenever he becomes tapped, target player mills X cards, where X is the number of lesson cards in your graveyard. Again, there's not a lot of lessons in this deck, but using him to do the waterbending means I'm going to get to make people person of my choice mill on a regular basis. Zhang, Firebending 1. The Exhaust I don't care about as much. I'm probably not going to use that very often, but the Firebending 1 is essential. The main reason why I'm not using a lot of other spell types in this deck is specifically because of her. 2/2 with first strike. Whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, they lose 2 life. So that's why this deck has, I think it's like 40 creatures and like 35, 40 lands. Like, it's an insane amount of there's very few non-creature spells, essentially, in this deck. I didn't really want to include Ty Lee, except for the fact that it felt unflavorful not to include her with Mai. But I mean, honestly, her abilities aren't the best in this deck. She's going to be mostly here for the waterbending again, because, or better yet, she's a good target for airbending, actually. Monk Yatsu is the other card that I made a trade for recently to get. Whenever another creature you control becomes the target of a spell or ability, you can airbend that creature. So that is just really phenomenal for this deck. Haru, sorry. Whenever an ally enters, earthbend 1. Smellerbee. First strike, all my other creatures have haste, so that's really helpful for all the allies that are coming into play and getting all the abilities. And whenever this one attacks, I can discard my hand, and if I do draw cards equal to the number of attacking creatures, probably not doing that ability unless I'm really stuck, but... Suki, this is my favorite version of Suki in the set right now. I think the mono white one is pretty good, but she wasn't going to fit in this deck as well as this one does. Whenever she attacks, I get to make another ally token that's tapped and attacking. When that attacking ally comes in, it's going to trigger all of these guys' abilities and buff my board insane. So that's why she's amazing for this deck. I don't have the Sokka I would have liked to have put in this deck. I only have 2 copies of Sokka, one that's red-blue and this version. Actually, I do have a mono-white one too, but the mono-white one also didn't fit well for this deck. And I'm planning to use it in a different one. So this is the best one of the 3 choices that I had. And whenever this or another creature attack, I get to draw a card, so that's not bad. Hakoda had to come into this deck for sure. I can cast ally spells from the top of my library, which is pretty cool. I can look at the top of my library anytime. And he basically gives all my stuff indestructible if I sacrifice him, so... Uncle Iroh, Firebending 1, lessons cost 1 less. Mainly in here for the firebending, also for the flavor. A lot of the creatures that are in here are largely in here because I wanted as many of the Avatar characters as possible in my Avatar deck. So, like I said, like Ty Lee, this version of Uncle Iroh probably wouldn't have made the cut. I probably would have cut out the Sokka, but I really wanted the flavor, so... Same with the Boomy. Boomy isn't the best one in this deck for sure. The Earthbending's pretty good, and if I can airbend him, that means I can keep bringing him in and triggering him over and over again, so that's not terrible. Katara, Water Tribe's Hope, Vigilance. She makes an ally when she comes in, so that's an extra trigger on my allies. And Waterbend X, pretty decent. The Bending Prodigy version of Katara is also solid. I have 2 copies of Toph, the first Metal Bender. I will be perfectly honest, if I had 2 copies of Hard-Headed Teacher, I would have put Hard-Headed Teacher in here instead of Metal Bender, because I think that's a better card for this deck, but I wanted that for its own commander deck. This one still is pretty decent because I can Earthbend 2 at the end of at my end step, which will still trigger Aang if need be. Blind Bandit also causes earthbending when she enters, so she's another good target for airbending. Zuko Firebending Master, first strike, Firebending X. And then you get experience counters when you cast spells during combat. So the reason why I like this one is because it combos really well with this one, which are both essentially Zuko if you know the actual lore of the anime. So... this one, you can cast your first creature spell each turn as though it had flash, and when you cast a non-token creature, or whenever a non-token creature enters during combat, you get to draw a card. So if you use this one's ability in combination with this one's ability, you could actually bring in creatures during your combat step and get experience counters to beef up the firebending on this one, which is pretty badass. And then I also included my other version of Zuko because I don't think I'm going to build a commander deck out of it, even though it is pretty cool. it really requires the airbending, I think, to make this work. So Firebending X is Fire Lord Zuko's power. Whenever you cast a spell from exile, and whenever a permanent you control enters from exile, you get to put +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So he's going to buff my ally board immensely every time I airbend and then cast whatever I've airbend out back into the play. Avatar Aang Last Airbender. Enters the battlefield, airbend up to one other target permanent. So airbending, for the record, when the thing gets exiled, you can cast it for 2 rather than its mana cost to bring it back into play. And because I didn't explain it before, earthbending is you put +1/+1 counters on a land and it becomes a creature. Waterbending, you can pay the extra cost by tapping mana or tapping creatures. And that's how the 4 bendings work. Momo, I had to include a Momo, and this is probably the best one out of the 2 copies I think I had for this deck. Flying Vigilance, when he leaves the battlefield, you get to choose one of the 3. So he's a good target again for airbending. Appa, pretty solid. When he attacks, you get to choose one. Either give a creature flying or airbend something, so probably going to do the latter. And I have both copies of Appa in this deck because both do pretty good stuff. When this one enters, you get to airbend any number of target non-land permanents you control, so another one that's going to be solid for airbending. And then bringing it back in. Whenever you cast a spell from exile, you get to also make an ally token, so it's going to trigger all my old school allies again, giving all the extra abilities. There are a few new school allies that trigger off of allies coming in, but not nearly as many as the old school pile, which is why I thought this is just a really neat strategy for this deck. Instead of focusing entirely on the bending, I'm focusing far more on the ally aspect, and I think I'm going to enjoy playing this. With that said, these 2 cards I saved to the end specifically because these 2 cards are the cards that are going to kind of break this deck and make people look at me and go, ew, that's disgusting. One of them is fairly obvious because everybody's talked about it before. The other one less so, but they both play off of the same thing with my commander. So my commander says that spells cost Wooburg less to cast, if I can get him to that side. And both these cards have the same ability, which is you can pay Wooburg rather than pay the mana cost for spells you cast. So if I can get either of these cards on board, and then have Avatar Aang on board, I essentially have Omniscience. It's a 2-card version of Omniscience instead of a 1-card version of Omniscience, but I have Omniscience, and I can play anything I want from the top of my deck if Hakoda's on the board, for example. I can play anything on my hand, and my hand can be maximum crazy if I've played that one waterbending spell earlier. This one's insanely cool because if it's in my opening hand at the start of the game, I automatically get to put it on the battlefield. I wish I had 2 copies of this so I could put the second copy in the deck that I'm currently building with Marina. But this had to go in this deck for sure, to give me an extra chance to try and pull off the Aang combo. So yeah, and that is my allies deck. I was going to crack a pack, but I don't know when my dad's going to be back, and I don't want to risk pushing it too far. So what I'm going to do is tomorrow morning, while I'm waiting for the grocery store to open, because I expect that I'll be done work kind of early, I am going to crack this bundle that I bought the other day, and possibly a pack of cards from our good buddy Shomanuchi. I haven't decided for sure yet about that second one, whether I want to do that yet or not, but I'm definitely going to be cracking this bundle at some point and doing a quick update about how things are and where we are and such. Maybe this will get included actually in the episode of 1 to 100. Maybe I'll film that tomorrow. Who knows? In the meantime, in between time though, you will see this sometime in the near future. But for now, much love to you all from Kappa the Pug, who's still sleeping in the bathroom, I believe. And myself to you. Take care. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this really cool Avatar deck. And I hope that you're looking forward to some more Avatar decks in the near future, because I still want to build a Fire Lord Azula deck. I want to build a Toph First Metalbender deck. I want to build a... I have an Iroh First White Lotus, a copy of Iroh the White Lotus, and I want to build a deck out of him. So there's at least 3 more Avatar decks that are eventually coming to the channel, but they're a little bit off because I have a few other decks that I want to work on first. So, yeah. Anyways, I'm rambling now. Thanks for watching. Much love to you all. Take care. Have a good week. Bye.